How can your weaknesses change the world? And how can these weaknesses also become your greatest strength? That's what we're going to talk about today, recounting the story and the life of Michael Faraday. Faraday was a young boy from England. He was a poor boy growing up around the time of industrialization, and he did not go to college. His father was a blacksmith. He did, however, get a job as a bookbinding apprentice, and there, instead of grumbling and complaining, he made the most of that job, and he read lots of books where he gathered much knowledge. And think about that for a moment. How can we, in whatever place that God puts us, start to pick up bits and pieces of something that might be more beneficial to us in the future? And that's the great thing about knowledge, that we can use it throughout our entire lives once we pick it up. We just have to have the willingness to do so. And so I actually went to college for electricity myself. I didn't hear much about Faraday. I don't recall ever hearing his name actually when I was a student. But this is a radio I built, an FM AM radio. I don't think I ever got it to work, but I did learn a lot of patience by building something like this. And after I got that college degree, I basically worked 1 week with that degree in electricity, electronics, and then disregarded it. I ended up at a monastery. That's another story for another day. But this was sort of like me working as that bookbinding apprentice. All of this knowledge about engineering. It's not something I even use now. Maybe I use it when I'm talking as a science teacher. And it's something ultimately which may have been pointless. I might see it as a waste of time, but God was still using that time for His ultimate purpose for my life. Now Faraday, he was a man of the Christian faith. His belief in the orderly creation is reflected in this one quote. I'm going to read it for us here. The book of nature, which we have to read, is written by the finger of God. It is from this worldview that he can strive to discover for the good of man. Again, quote, nothing is too wonderful to be true, if it be consistent with the laws of nature. And so nature itself is very orderly. That's what a lot of scientists love about nature, because they see the love of God itself implanted in nature. As a painter is often reflected by the artwork he creates. God can be seen in his marvelous works. But back to Faraday. Whatever happened to him? Did he end up owning the bookbinding shop himself? Did he, fall into ruin? He lived a life of poverty. Did he ever advance in his standing in life? Well, the story takes a turn when he attended a lecture at the Royal Institution. Now, he was a boy always interested in science. There's a story that he wanted like a coin from his brother just to buy an electronics kit, or an electricity kit more so back then, from a shop. But the Royal Institution still is a place of excellent learning. You can watch many of their lectures online. Some of the Faraday lectures themselves are kind of redone by professors there. There was one professor, Sir Humphrey Davy, famous at the time. I believe he discovered an element. And Faraday admired him a lot. He sat in that lecture hall, and instead of just listening, that's what everyone else was doing, he decided, what if I make the best of this moment? What if I start taking notes of everything he's saying? And remember, this is the 1800s. There's no audio recorder like I'm using now. And so this lecturer, Sir Humphrey Davy, he would have been very appreciative for someone to write down all of his lectures and put it in a book. That way he could have this book, maybe sell it, maybe use it to spread some of his knowledge. And that's what Faraday did. He brought this master, this book, and you would now think at this moment that Sir Humphrey Davy is going to hire him to take him on as an apprentice. But that does not happen. It takes another year. The apprentice that Sir Humphrey Davy has to be fired first. And then Michael Faraday has that moment of providence where everything leading up to it culminates in this moment, and he gets the job working as an apprentice under Sir Humphrey Davy. Now here, He gathered a lot of knowledge of chemistry and some of the other parts of science, but he was still looked down upon from the other scientists because he never went to university. And so he lacked a lot of the mathematical knowledge, the university knowledge that a lot of other scientists would have at the time. And so he might have had an imposter syndrome. We hear that term, imposter syndrome, where you're doing something, but it might not feel natural. It feels like you're doing something that you're not qualified for. That's the term. We live in a society of credentials. But Michael Faraday still used this weakness, what he might have felt some shame about, or maybe some discomfort with. Maybe he felt teased by the other scientists, looked down upon, but he flipped that around and made it a strength. They were all seeing the world through Newtonian physics from Isaac Newton, like gravity goes up and down, but he was looking at the waves. He would put iron filings on a magnet. This is something other scientists had did, and the iron filings go around the magnet, sort of like waves. And he noticed that something has to be behind this. It can't just be straight up and down gravity. It has to be something else. And that's how he discovers electromagnetism, this connection between electricity and magnets. And it was this ingenuity of actually working with his hands, of looking and observing, that made him such an amazing scientist. He invented the first electric motor in this way. He's famous for much discoveries in refrigeration, electric batteries. Most of these things can trace their roots back to him. That's why he's called the father of electricity. And he contributed much to his fellow man. That was another thing that differentiated Faraday. He didn't do all of this for money. He did it to contribute to society, to make the lives of people around him easier. And so, he had a concept of this electric motor. It was very small. Somebody else took it, ran with it, probably made all the money off of it. But he was discovering things at a very fast pace. And by the end of his life, he was very well renowned. And the Queen of England, Queen Victoria, actually offered him knighthood for his scientific service. But perhaps humility made the ultimate gem in his crown. He declined this offer from the Queen, saying, "I must remain plain Michael Faraday to the last." And so, he did die with the same humility that he had as an apprentice, with the same humility that he had working under Sir Humphrey Davy, and with the same humility that allowed him to actually serve his brothers and sisters in the world. And so the question I want to leave you with is, do you also seek to serve your fellow neighbor? How can your weakness, remember Michael Faraday's weakness, he was poor at a time when he wouldn't be able to go to university to learn scientific knowledge. There wasn't a such thing as YouTube. He didn't know mathematics very well, and so that put him in another category of having to observe. These were his weaknesses. But how can God use your weaknesses, your past experiences, to not only transform your life into something better, but to also allow you to be productive and useful to the world? Not productive in the sense of making a lot of money, but instead helping others, serving others with all of your strength, and still keeping the Christian faith before your eyes at all times, because there's a lot of turns that Michael Faraday could have went down. He was offered so many prestigious things. I believe the head of the Royal Institution at one point. So much power. He could have been offered much wealth for his discoveries, but he knew that this could have been bad for him, and it can also be bad for us. And so, I want to leave you with the story of Michael Faraday, that it may inspire you, that it may help you, not only to get rid of this imposter syndrome. We often go out and we feel like we're not qualified, but God doesn't call the people that are prepared. He prepares the people He calls, like Moses with the stammer. Moses speaking the 10 Commandments. Moses, who led the Israelites through the Red Sea, out of Egypt. And these are the people God calls. The young shepherd boy David, who defeats Goliath, who leads his kingdom of Israel. These are the people that God wants to show his power through. People like Michael Faraday and people like me and you. So may God bless you. Thank you for watching The Sacred Heart for the world for the Sacred Heart.